On the morning of
possibilities.
October 9th, 2022,
Universe-inherited
the
structure
electronic
or
eyes we have
energy from
cast into
previous
the dark
cosmic
were not looking
cycles.
for a sign
A
of
cosmic
divinity.
legacy.
They
Rapid
were merely
galaxy
recording the
formation.
steady,
Not a
rhythmic
beginning
pulse of a
from
clockwork
primordial
abyss,
simplicity, but a
high above the
recovery
veil
from
of our
prior
atmosphere.
complexity.
Two silent sentinels,
Selective
the
pressure.
Fermi Gamma Ray Space
Universes
Telescope
producing more
and
black
the Neil
holes have more
Gehrels
offspring,
Swift Observatory
driving cosmic
drifted through the
evolution.
vacuum. These machines were the fruit of decades of human ingenuity, designed to catch the faint, ghostly whispers of
Searching
the
for
distant
subtle
cosmos.
effects, weaker
They were the
signals buried in
switchboard
much
operators of
stronger
our technological
astrophysical
era,
noise, like finding a
plugged into the
needle in a
infinite,
haystack.
waiting for the
Breaking
crackle of a
Lambda
distant
CDM.
catastrophe.
Initial reports.
For
Standard
eons,
framework
the region
unable
of
to
space they
accommodate such
monitored had been a
rapid
silent
galaxy
void.
formation.
But at exactly
Supermassive black holes
1:15 in the
consuming matter
afternoon,
and
coordinated
outshining their host
universal time,
galaxies by
a
enormous
gear
factors,
slipped in the
a
machinery of the
cosmic
heavens.
streetlight.
A surge of high-energy photons traveling across the vast expanse of 2,400,000,000 light-years finally reached the threshold of our solar system. It did not arrive with a sound, for the vacuum is a mute witness, but it arrived with a violence that transcended the limits of our engineering. When the burst struck, it did not merely trigger the sensors, it overwhelmed them. This was not a delicate observation of a distant star. This was a mechanical failure of the cosmic sensory array. The detectors on Fermi and Swift, designed to count the individual particles of light that represent the most energetic events in the universe, were suddenly blinded. It was as if a man had spent his entire life listening for the fall of a single pin in a cathedral, only to have a massive iron bell shatter directly against his ear. The silicon and gold of our satellites were saturated, their logic gates flooded by an inexorable tide of gamma radiation so intense that the instruments themselves ceased to function as intended. They were plunged into a digital oblivion, their circuits screaming in a language of overvoltage and saturation. Down on the surface of the pale blue dot, the scientists were small operators of a switchboard that had just gone critical. In clean rooms and windowless laboratories, monitors began to flash with data that defied the expected parameters. There was no joy in this discovery at first, only the cold, clinical realization that the machine was failing to keep up with the reality it was meant to measure. The engineers watched as the graph spiked into a vertical wall, a jagged cliff of energy that tore through the baseline of the ordinary. They were witnessing the interaction of a high-voltage engine of creation with our fragile electronic bubble. The burst, originating from the collapse of a massive star into a black hole in a distant and nameless galaxy, had been travelling toward us since a time when life on Earth was little more than a microscopic experiment in the primordial seas. For 2,400,000,000 years, this invisible wave of destruction had been carving its way through the tapestry of the cosmos, indifferent to the rise and fall of civilizations or the slow cooling of suns. It was a remnant of a catastrophic ignition, a signal sent by a furnace of such magnitude that it defied human comprehension. To the universe, this event was a routine function of its relentless mechanism. It was the closing of a circuit, the tightening of a spring, the inevitable decay of a giant into a singularity. But to us, it was a reminder of our profound insignificance. We have built our civilization on the assumption of a stable sky,
but even at the
a
speed of light,
predictable
this data
backdrop
won't
for our
reach us
brief
for
and
over 8
frantic
minutes,
lives.
and only then can the analysis
Yet,
begin.
the event of October 9th, 2022 stripped away that illusion. The blinding of our sentinels was a physical manifestation of the scale paradox. We are small, fragile creatures peering through a keyhole at a storm that spans the width of the eternity. As the radiation washed over the planet, it did more than just blind our satellites. It physically altered the upper reaches of our atmosphere, ionizing the air and disrupting the radio waves that hum around our globe. For a few brief minutes, the Earth itself was part of the circuit of that distant explosion. We were touched by a hand of fire that had been reaching for us for more than half the age of our world. The mechanism of the universe does not care about our observations. It does not care about our safety or our desire to understand. It is a ruthless machine, governed by the laws of entropy and the inexorable march of time. The scientists began to call it the brightest of all time, a title that felt insufficient for the weight of what had occurred. It was a symphony of destruction played on a scale that made our entire history seem like a single, flickering candle in an abyss. The sheer volume of energy released in those few seconds was greater than our sun will produce in its entire 10 billion year lifespan. It was a reminder that we live in a neighbourhood of giants, and we are merely the dust that gathers in the corners of their vast workshops. In the aftermath, as the satellites slowly recovered their vision and the data was painstakingly reconstructed from the edges of the saturation, a sense of melancholic wonder took hold. We had seen the engine of the cosmos at full throttle. We had felt the heat of a distant forge. The blinding of the Sentinels was not an ending, but a prologue. It revealed that the void is not empty. It is a pressurized chamber of forces that we are only beginning to perceive. We are observers of a high-voltage engine we do not control. We are the witnesses to a process of unravelling and ignition that began long before we existed, and will continue long after our electronic shells have decayed into the red dust of a dying planet. On that day in October, the universe reminded us that it is not a garden meant for our delight, but a machine of infinite complexity and terrifying power. And we, sitting at our switchboards, are merely recording the sparks as the great gears turn in the silent, eternal dark. The light that blinded us was the signature of a star's death, a final screaming protest as it was devoured by its own gravity. It was a cataclysm that occurred in the deep past, yet it arrived with the freshness of a new wound. This is the nature of the cosmic mechanism. The past is always reaching out to touch the present, and the distant is always lurking just beyond the horizon of our perception. We are the remnants of such fires, and yet we are the only ones standing in the dark, trying to count the embers. As the sensors on Fermi and Swift returned to their baseline, the silence of the void felt heavier than before. The machine had spoken, and for a few fleeting moments, we were forced to listen to its cold, mechanical heart. To understand the true magnitude of this event, one must look beyond the flashing lights of our instruments and peer into the cold mathematics of the abyss. This pulse of energy, which we have named the brightest of all time, was not merely a rare occurrence. It was a statistical anomaly that bordered on the impossible. In the grand ledger of the cosmos, an event of this intensity is estimated to happen only once every 10,000 years. It was a singular stroke of the universal engine, a moment where the internal pressures of the vacuum reached a breaking point and vented their fury into the silence. To our ancestors, such a light would have been seen as an omen or a divine intervention, but through the lens of our modern Sentinels, we recognise it for what it truly is. The terrifyingly efficient operation of a machine that operates on a scale of time and energy that renders human life a mere rounding error. Imagine, if you will, the universe as a vast industrial complex, an infinite factory where the laws of physics are the gears and gravity is the belt that drives the assembly. Most of the time, this machine hums with a low, steady vibration, the quiet ticking of trillions of stars burning through their hydrogen reserves. But on that day in the deep past, a piston within this cosmic factory fired with a force so monumental that it shook the very foundations of the structure. The resulting spark was not meant to be seen. It was simply a byproduct of the mechanism's inexorable function. We, standing on our small rocky outpost, were merely the incidental witnesses to a discharge of power that was never intended for our eyes. It was as if a titanic furnace door had been flung open for a fraction of a second, casting a blinding glare across the entire width of the tapestry of space.
Data streams synchronized across all
the physical impact of this spark was felt not just by our sensitive electronics, but by the very atmosphere that shields us from the void. 2 billion light years away, the machine had shuddered, and yet the ripples of that movement reached out to touch the Earth with a physical presence. The ionosphere, the thin electrified skin that sits at the very top of our world, reacted as if it had been struck by a solid object. The deluge of high-energy photons compressed this layer, ionizing the air and altering the chemical composition of the sky. For those few minutes, the boundary between our home and the oblivion of space was blurred. We were physically linked to a catastrophe that occurred before the first multicellular organisms had even begun to crawl through the primordial oceans of our world. It was a touch from the deep void, a reminder that we are not insulated from the violence of the cosmos by the vastness of the distance. The distance is merely a delay, a long fuse burning toward a predetermined end. There is a cold, mechanical beauty in this process, a dangerous efficiency that defines the life and death of the stars. The universe does not perform for us. It does not create these spectacles to inspire wonder or to provide a backdrop for our mythologies. It operates with a ruthless precision, converting mass into energy with a total lack of waste.
Final confirmation on the cross-section.
The star that collapsed to create this burst was not a victim.
It matches the estimate perfectly.
It was a component reaching the end of its functional life. Its final act, the creation of a black hole, was the ultimate expression of the second law of thermodynamics, a concentrated burst of entropy that sent a signal through the eons to tell us that the machine is still running, still consuming, and still expanding. The magnitude of the spark was so vast that it redefined our understanding of what the universe is capable of producing. It was a reminder that we are living in the shadow of giants, and that the quiet we perceive in the night sky is merely the pause between the firing of the great cylinders. This event was a rift in the mundane reality of our observations. For 10,000 years, the light from similar collapses may pass us by, undetected or overshadowed by the mundane glow of closer neighbours. But this specific discharge was so powerful that it pierced through the dust of galaxies and the fog of intergalactic space to rattle our very windows. We are like children living in the basement of a great power plant, unaware of the massive turbines spinning above our heads until a single, stray bolt of electricity arcs through the floorboards. The realization that such power exists is both humbling and terrifying. It strips away the illusion of our importance and replaces it with the stark reality of our fragility.
We are maintaining a vigilant watch
We are the
over the data
remnants of
streams.
older fires.
At this moment, there
We
is no
exist
cause for
only
alarm.
because the
We
great gears of the
anticipate
cosmos have
stabilization
not
in the
yet
coming hour.
turned to crush our specific corner of the void. The epic of our existence is a brief flicker when compared to the intervals between these cosmic pulses. To say that this was the brightest of all time is to acknowledge that we have witnessed the peak performance of the celestial engine during our short watch. It is a moment of profound significance for the witness, but for the machine, it was just another cycle, another star devoured, another hole ripped in the fabric of the silent, eternal dark. The radiation that bathed the Earth was a message written in the language of high-energy physics, a testament to the fact that the universe is not a garden, but a pressurized chamber of forces that we are only beginning to perceive. The ionosphere has since settled, the satellites have rebooted their systems, and the data has been archived into the digital vaults of our history. Yet, the knowledge remains. We have felt the heat of the forge, and we know now that the spark which created us is the same spark that can, with the same indifferent efficiency, unmake the world we call home. The gears turn, the pistons fire, and we continue to record the sparks, standing as silent sentinels on the edge of the abyss, watching the great machine perform its lonely, magnificent, and terrible work. To understand the true nature of this celestial catastrophe, we must look past the brilliance of the light and peer into the cold, mechanical heart of the event itself. What we witnessed was not a poetic conclusion to a cosmic life, but rather a catastrophic structural failure of a massive celestial engine. In the vast, indifferent factory of the cosmos, a star is not a being, but a furnace, a pressurized chamber where the fundamental forces of the universe are harnessed to stave off the inexorable pull of oblivion.
Established baseline.
For millions of
energy
years,
signature
this
correlates with
specific
the
engine
recent spikes in-
operated with a staggering efficiency, fusing hydrogen into helium, and then helium into heavier elements, each step a calculated exchange of mass for the energy required to hold back the crushing weight of its own existence. It was a delicate balance, a symphony of outward pressure and inward gravity, maintained by the constant combustion of the nuclear fuel. But the machine has a flaw, a built-in obsolescence written into the very laws of physics. As the fuel is consumed, the furnace must run hotter and faster to maintain its structural integrity, moving through a series of desperate chemical transitions that signal the approaching end
The
of its functional
philosophical
life.
acceptance that the iron
Failure
absence
begins in the
represents
core,
a fundamental
the central
difference
chamber
in
of
its
the
birth
engine,
environment.
where the pressure reaches levels that defy human comprehension. When the star has exhausted its lighter elements, it begins to forge iron. This is the terminal point for the celestial machine. Unlike the elements that came before it, iron does not release energy when it is fused. Instead, it consumes it. The introduction of iron into the core is like pouring sand into the gears of a high-speed turbine. The energy production, which for eons had acted as the pillar holding up the vast architecture of the star, suddenly ceases. In an instant, the outward pressure vanishes, the engine stalls. What follows is a collapse so violent and so rapid that it transcends our traditional understanding of motion. Without the supporting fire of fusion, the massive weight of the outer layers, a mass equivalent to hundreds of thousands of Earths, falls inward at a significant fraction of the speed of light. The star begins to devour itself, its internal structure unraveling as it plunges toward its own center. This is the collapsar mechanism, a process of mechanical ruin that transforms a beacon of light into a monument of gravity. As the core collapses, the density reaches a threshold that shatters the very atoms of which it is composed. To visualize the scale of this compression, imagine a mountain range, with all its peaks and valleys, its stone and its soil, being crushed by an invisible hand until it occupies the space of a single grain of sand. This is not merely a change in state.
The return
it is
to
a total
routine observation
breakdown of the
schedules.
physical
The
scaffolding that
instruments
defines our
recalibrating
reality.
for local solar
The
system
core
targets.
becomes so dense that it can no longer exist as ordinary matter. It passes the point of no return, crossing an invisible threshold to become a black hole, a singular point of infinite density, a hole ripped in the tapestry of space and time. This is the ultimate sink of entropy, a place where information and energy are sequestered away from the rest of the universe, never to return. But the machine does not fail quietly. As the outer layers of the star fall toward the newly formed abyss at the center,
The detection
they
phase is
encounter a
complete.
chaotic
We have a
environment of
confirmed
swirling
signal.
magnetic
All right, team.
fields and
Excitement
extreme
is over.
rotation.
Time for the grind.
Not all
Calibrate
of the matter
sensors.
is swallowed by the
The
void.
radiation flux is increasing
In a final,
exponentially.
We are
desperate
seeing
gasp of the
significant
dying
sublimation
engine,
at the poles.
a portion of the
Structural
collapsing
integrity
material
is
is
failing.
diverted. The immense rotational energy of the system acts like a cosmic centrifuge, funneling the infalling plasma into two narrow, highly concentrated streams. These are the jets, the high-pressure exhaust of a
And the
collapsing
energy
furnace.
output matches the simulation.
What's the
They are
next phase?
expelled
Science
from the poles of the
advances
star
by
at
testing the boundaries of the
99.99% of the speed of light, piercing through the remains of the stellar atmosphere and screaming out into the vacuum of space. These
The
jets are
normal
the
we
source
know
of the gamma ray
is
burst,
only a local
a
phenomenon.
beam of concentrated radiation so powerful that it can outshine entire galaxies for the brief duration of its firing. We perceive this as a flash of light, a signal from the deep past, but in the clinical reality of the cosmos, it is simply the sound of a gear snapping.
The signal
The
fluctuation
radiation
is
that
increasing
travelled
at the
across
7
the eons
gigahertz
to
band.
reach our senses
I see it.
was the
Adjusting
byproduct
the
of a
tracking
structural
angle now.
collapse, the kinetic energy of a falling giant
Solar
converted
conjunction.
into electromagnetic fury. The star did not die because it was old. It died because its internal mechanism could no longer support the weight of its own ambition. The ruthless machine of the universe demands a constant payment in entropy, and when the star could no longer pay, it was liquidated. The resulting black hole is the cold,
The
silent
dedication
remnant
to
of this
maintaining
transaction,
high cadence
a sentinel
observations
of the
during
abyss
future
that will
close
remain
approaches.
long after the light of the burst has faded into the cosmic background. In this mechanical view of the cosmos, there is no room for sentiment. The collapse of a star is an event of profound indifference, a routine maintenance of the universal ledger. The energy released is not a gift, but a discharge, a venting of pressure from
The
a
baseline
system
is
that has reached
optimized.
its limit.
Look at the resolution.
We, as
Incredible.
observers,
We're
are
seeing
merely
the inner coma
witnesses to the
structure
exhaust.
clearly for the first time.
We see the brilliance of the jet, but we must remember that it is the result of a catastrophe, a failure of atomic architecture on a scale that
Look at the
dwarfs our
fluctuation
entire
pattern
history.
here, just off the galactic
The
plane.
universe is
I
a
see it.
vast assembly of these engines,
Cross-reference
each
with the
one
dark
ticking
matter
toward
map.
its own inevitable
The
stall,
dedication to
each
developing
one destined to
non-visual
eventually
methods
succumb
for
to the
probing
same
the
mechanical
nucleus.
decay. The Epoch of Stars is a temporary phase in the history of the cosmos, a period of
The lava
light
is
fueled
dense,
by the slow
metallic.
consumption of primordial reserves.
But
One by one, the furnaces will fail, the gears will stop turning, the pistons will cease their fire, and the great machine will gradually settle into the silent, eternal dark of a post-stellar age. The black hole that now occupies the space where a star once stood is the final state of the mechanism. It is a perfect object, a sphere of pure gravity that no longer requires fuel, no longer produces heat,
Trajectory
and no longer
confirmed.
interacts with the world
It's
of light.
accelerating. We have an
It is
object.
the end of the line for the matter that was once trapped within the star's forge. As we look out into the void, we are looking at a graveyard of failed engines, a landscape littered with the remnants of these cosmic collapses. Each burst we detect is a reminder of the fragility of the structures we take for granted. Even the sun, the steady hearth that provides the energy for our world, is governed by these same ruthless laws. It is a smaller machine, less prone to the violent collapse of its larger cousins, but it is a machine nonetheless, and its fuel is finite. The story of the universe is the story of this slow, inexorable descent from the high-energy
The legacy
fire
of
of the
the data,
beginning
a
to
new
the
chemical
cold,
type added
dark
to the catalog of
equilibrium the
comets.
end. We are the children of the furnace,
Sensor
living in
array
the
is
brief
online.
interval between
We
the
have full
ignition
spectral
of the
coverage and
stars and the final
stabilization.
failure of the
Confirmed.
last celestial
we
engine.
are ready for the approach.
We observe the sparks, we record the failures, and we stand in awe of the terrible, magnificent precision of the machine that created us, and which will, in the fullness of time, unmake everything we have ever known. Yet, as we stare into the heart of this mechanical graveyard, we find that the machine does not always follow the blueprints we have so painstakingly drafted. For centuries we believed we had sketched the schematics of the heavens with a degree of certainty that bordered on arrogance. We convinced ourselves that the laws of physics were a complete set of instructions, a manual that allowed us to predict the behaviour of every gear and piston within the cosmic engine. But the arrival of this specific flash of light, this anomalous pulse from the deep abyss, has unravelled that comfort. It was a black swan, an event so improbable and so violent that it exposed the terrifying gaps in our understanding of the universal mechanism. In the standard models of our science, we rely on the predictable decay of energy.
Look
We
at this
observe the
absorption
death of a
line. That
star and
correlates
we expect
perfectly
the
with the
afterglow
methane
to behave
signature.
like a
The
cooling
atmospheric
ember in a
density
dying
matches the
hearth.
Type 2 prediction.
This
We
process
have
is governed by the
confirmation.
laws of
The definition
synchrotron
needs
radiation,
refining.
where
Atlas
charged
C2 clearly
particles are
behaves
whipped into a
differently in this
frenzy
zone.
by
Yes,
magnetic
the ice to
fields,
dust ratio
shedding
is
their energy as
inconsistent with
light.
the current model.
According to our mathematical blueprints, this light should fade in a specific measurable cadence. The curve of its brilliance should descend predictably into the dark, a gentle slide toward oblivion. But this burst refused to follow the script. It did not fade like an ember. It burned like a persistent furnace, fueled by a source we could not see and governed by a logic we did not yet possess. This was the first indication that we had missed a hidden gear within the machine. We had assumed the jet of energy produced by the collapsing star was a simple, outward-moving cone of fire. We imagined it as a singular discharge,
The
a venting
philosophical
of pressure from the
contemplation
core.
of the object
However,
structure.
the data revealed a
Was it
structure far more
homogeneous
complex,
or layered?
a multi-layered mechanism of kinetic energy that defied our singular models. The jet was not a simple beam. It was a sophisticated engine of its own, perhaps possessing a narrow, ultra-fast core surrounded by broader, slower wings of matter. This complexity meant that the energy did not dissipate as we expected. Instead, it lingered, striking the surrounding interstellar medium with such ferocity that it created a sustained wall of light that should not, by our current understanding of the cosmos, have been possible. We are forced to confront the reality that our mathematical models are not the laws of the universe, but merely our narrow interpretations of them. We are like children attempting to map a vast ancient city by looking at the glow of its streetlights from a great distance. We see the points of light and we draw lines between them, assuming we understand the layout of the streets, the height of the towers, and the purpose of the inhabitants. But then, a tower collapses or a new light ignites, and we realise that our map is a fiction. The event we witnessed, occurring 2 billion light-years away, was a catastrophic failure of our predictive power. The sheer intensity of the light, which saturated our senses and blinded our instruments, was a physical manifestation of our ignorance.
Look at the
This
density
failure
fluctuations
extends
here.
to the
That could
very
accelerate the
foundations
accretion
of
rate
how we measure the
significantly.
Exactly,
vastness
and
of
the
the
thermal
cosmos.
imaging supports the
For
localized
decades,
gravitational collapse.
astronomers have utilized certain celestial events as standard candles, objects of known brightness that serve as milestones in the dark. By measuring how dim these candles appear from Earth, we calculate the distance to the furthest reaches of the observable universe. We use these measurements to build the scale of the cosmos, to determine the rate of its expansion, and to predict its ultimate fate. But this anomaly has cast a shadow of doubt over these certainties. If a burst can defy our model so completely, if it can burn brighter and longer than any mechanism we have conceived, then how many other standard candles are actually flickering in ways we do not understand? The tape measure we use to gauge the dimensions of the abyss may be warped, and the distances we have calculated may be based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the fire. The machine is far older and far more intricate than our brief epoch of observation allows us to see. We are attempting to decipher a system that has been running for 13,800,000,000 years, using data we have gathered in less than a single century. It is a hubris of the highest order to believe that we have found every gear, or that we have mastered the physics of the extreme. The Black Swan anomaly is a reminder that the universe is under no obligation to be understood by us. It operates on a scale of energy and time that renders our most advanced mathematics into primitive scratches on a cave wall. We are witnessing the operation of a mechanism that exists at the very limit of what is possible.
The drift on the
Where matter
z-axis is still
crushed
showing
into
instability
states that
past the
defy our
threshold.
laboratory
Rerouting the
experiments,
compensation
and where
algorithm.
gravity
Good, the pipeline
warps
is
the
holding steady.
fabric of
Robustness
reality
confirmed.
into
Alignment
shapes
is
we can
complete.
barely
The
imagine.
stability is within
As we
picometer
attempt to
tolerances.
reconcile this failure, we
Confirmed.
must accept
The
that the
near-infrared
universe is
bands
not a
are
static
clear.
tapestry,
We have 100%
but a dynamic and often
verification across all
ruthless machine. It is a system of
Acknowledge.
constant
Finalizing
adjustment
the
and
sequence.
violent correction. The hidden gears we have just discovered, the complex jet structures, the unexpected persistence of the radiation, the defiance of the synchrotron limit, are all parts of a larger, more terrifying whole. They suggest that the vacuum of space is not truly empty, but is instead a medium that interacts with energy in ways that are still hidden from our view. The light of the burst had to plough through the gas and dust of 2 billion years of history to reach us, and in that journey, it may have been shaped by forces we have yet to name.
This will establish
We
a
find
new
ourselves in a
standard
position
for
of
characterizing
melancholic
interstellar
uncertainty.
visitors.
We have seen the blueprints fail, and in that failure we have caught a glimpse of the true scale of the mystery. The maps we have drawn of the cosmos are beautiful, but they are incomplete. They are the work of naive cartographers who have never left their own shores. We look out into the void and we see the sparks of the great machine, and we realise that for every gear we can name, there are 1,000 more turning in the dark, silent and invisible. The failure of our predictions is not a defeat, but a revelation. It tells us that the story of the universe is far more complex, far more dangerous, and far more magnificent than we ever dared to dream. We are the witnesses to a mechanism that does not care for our formulas. The star collapsed, the black hole formed, and the jet erupted with a fury that shattered our expectations. In the aftermath, we are left to pick up the pieces of our broken theories and attempt to build something new. We must
That's
learn
it.
to speak the
Final
language of the
confirmation.
machine,
It's
not as we
definitely
wish it to be,
interstellar.
but as it truly is.
A
We must
truly
acknowledge
unique
the
body.
existence of the hidden gears, the silent sentinels of the abyss that govern the flow of energy across eons. The universe remains a vast, inexorable engine of change, and we are merely the passengers, trying to understand the rhythm of the pistons before the fire eventually goes out. Our journey into the heart of the mechanism has only just begun, and the anomalies we find are the only true guides we have in the eternal dark of the void. The search for our origins has always been a quest for the Forge. We have long believed that the gold resting against our skin and the rare metals buried deep within our technology were the heavy dividends of cosmic catastrophe. We imagined a universe that, in its moments of ultimate violence, acted as a divine jeweler, crushing the very fabric of atoms to create the complex elements required for our existence. But as we turned our most sophisticated instruments toward the afterglow of the greatest burst ever recorded, we found ourselves standing before a factory without a product. The James Webb Space Telescope, a lonely sentinel stationed 1 million miles from our home, spent hours drinking in the light from a scar in the constellation Sagitta. It was looking for the signature of the R process, the rapid neutron capture mechanism that we assumed was the primary source of the heavy elements in the cosmos. We expected to find a treasure trove of gold and platinum, a primordial inheritance forged in the heart of the explosion. Instead, we found a chilling, empty silence. This absence creates a profound paradox that challenges the very foundation of our cosmic history. We are faced with the reality of an industrial forge of unimaginable proportions, a mechanism that liberated more energy in a few seconds than our sun will emit over 10 billion years, and yet it left behind no valuable material. It is a factory that consumes its raw fuel with terrifying efficiency, producing immense heat and blinding light, but failing to manufacture the building blocks we once thought were its destiny. We have viewed the universe as a purposeful creator, an architect that uses the death of stars to plant the seeds of future worlds. But the data from the Great Telescope suggests a more unsettling truth. The universe may be an inefficient manufacturer, a vast and indifferent engine that prioritizes the raw release of energy over the delicate assembly of matter. The heavy elements that we consider so precious, the gold, the uranium, the tellurium, may not be the inevitable byproduct of every great cataclysm. They may be the rarest of accidents, the result of specific conditions that we have yet to truly identify. As we peer into the fading remnant of the burst, we are forced to use a new ladder of abstraction to understand this failure. Imagine a forge the size of a solar system, where the temperature reaches trillions of degrees and the pressure is enough to collapse the very idea of space. We expected this forge to be filled with the clatter of creation, the sound of neutrons slamming into nuclei to build the heavy elements of the periodic table. Instead, the forge is quiet. The fire is there. The heat is inexorable, but the anvil is bare. The light we see is merely the glow of the furnace, a remnant of a process that spent all its capital on speed and fury, leaving nothing behind for the ledger of life. This realization unravels our neat stories of stellar evolution. If the most energetic event ever witnessed by our species did not produce the gold in our veins, then we must look again into the abyss and ask where our substance truly began.
We're seeing some anomalous readings here.
We are looking for a
Let's
ghost in the
cross-reference
machine,
that with the
a
older
mechanism
spectral
that
data.
operates by rules we have not yet mastered. The search through the debris is a journey into the primordial void. We use the spectral lines of light like a chemical fingerprint, hoping to see the telltale shadows of heavy atoms. We see the hydrogen, we see the helium, and we see the lighter elements that are the common currency of the stars. But the heavy elements, the ones that require the most extreme conditions to exist, are nowhere to be found. This suggests that the universe is far more selective than we dared to imagine. It is a machine that can produce a symphony of light while remaining completely silent in the language of matter. The gold we wear may not be the product of these singular violent outbursts that tear through the tapestry of space. It may instead come from the quiet, slow decay of neutron stars in the deep dark, or from processes so rare that they occur only once in 1,000 galaxies. We find ourselves in the position of a witness who has seen the lightning but can find no trace of the fire. This failure of the R process in such a massive event forces us to confront the ruthless nature of the cosmos. The universe is under no obligation to provide us with the materials for our civilization.
Night 2 now.
It is a system of energy
Wavelength
transfer,
check confirms
a
consistency.
mechanism of
We are
entropy
within
that seeks
tolerance.
to dissipate the concentrated power of the early cosmos into the cold oblivion of the future. The creation of heavy elements is in many ways an act of defiance against this decay. It is the assembly of complex structures in an environment that favours destruction. When we see a burst of this magnitude fail to produce these elements, we are seeing the machine winning. We are seeing a universe that would rather burn its energy in a clean, empty flash than store it in the heavy nuclei of atoms. This is the melancholic reality of our existence. We are the remnants of a process that the universe often ignores. We are the exceptions to a rule of vast, empty radiance. The James Webb Space Telescope continues its silent
changes
vigil,
with temperature.
a metal bird in the eternal night, sending back data that we must now reconcile with our broken models. We see the afterglow fading, the light becoming a dim memory of the catastrophe that once was. The void returns to its natural state, undisturbed and cold. We are left with the question of our own rarity. If the universe is a factory that produces light but avoids the production of heavy matter, then every atom of gold on our planet becomes a sacred relic of an even more mysterious event. We are not the inevitable result of cosmic violence. We are the improbable survivors of a process that the universe seems to conduct with a strange and terrifying inefficiency. The abyss does not care for our jewellery or our science. It only cares for the flow of energy from the hot centre to the cold edge. In this realisation, there is a sense of majestic isolation. We are the observers of a mechanism that operates on a scale
As you
we
can
can
see,
barely
our new
perceive,
methodology
and yet we have
guarantees
found that the machine does
100%
not always
success rate
follow our
with
expected
zero side
blueprints.
effects.
That's simply
The
not.
failure to find heavy elements in the wake of the Great Burst is a reminder that the cosmos is still full of hidden rooms and locked doors. We are the children of a factory that we do not fully understand, looking for our origin in the ashes of fires that leave no trace. The
The
tapestry of
final
the universe is being
confirmation that the
rewoven
safety
before our
protocols
eyes,
were
and
always
the threads are made of
primary in
light,
official
not
communications.
gold. We must accept that our presence in the cosmos is a fluke of a machine that usually forgets to build what it burns. We stand on our small rocky world, looking out into the inexorable dark, realizing that the treasure we seek in the stars may be far more elusive than the light that reveals it. The universe remains a silent sentinel, guarding its secrets behind a wall of radiant energy, leaving us to wonder if we are the
The
only
lingering
product the
echo
factory
of the
ever
CN
truly
signature,
finished.
a
But
marker
the indifference
of
of the
peak
universe is not
volatility.
merely found in what it fails to create. It is most terrifyingly expressed in what it is capable of destroying. If our existence is a fluke of the cosmic factory, it is a fluke that survives only by the mercy of distance. We exist within a mathematical margin of survival, a narrow corridor of safety and a gallery of cosmic snipers. To understand the fragility of the biological tapestry, we must look away from the distant flashes and imagine a scenario where the machine turns its gaze directly toward us. We must contemplate the kill zone, consider a coordinate in the vast, silent dark, a mere 3,000 light-years from our Sun. In the grand geography of the Milky Way, this is a neighbourhood stroll, a fraction of the distance across the spiral arms. Yet, should a gamma ray burst ignite at this range, the result is not a beautiful point of light for our telescopes to study, but an inexorable tide of invisible destruction. The universe does not act with malice. It does not seek to punish the life that has crawled out of the primordial mud. It simply operates.
Yes,
A
the emission
star
signature is
collapses,
undeniable.
a black hole is born, and the engine of the cosmos vents its excess energy in a focused beam of high-frequency radiation. It is a spark from a grinding wheel, a routine discharge of the celestial mechanism. We are merely the dust caught in the path of the spark. The wave travels at the speed of light, crossing the 3,000-year void in silence. There is no warning. No sentinel can give us a signal, for the signal is the catastrophe itself. When the radiation reaches the upper atmosphere, the first stage of the unravelling begins. The gamma rays do not strike the ground. They strike the very air we breathe. They shatter the molecules of nitrogen and oxygen, forcing them
The
into
scientific
new
caution
toxic
extends to the final
configurations.
public summary.
The sky does not turn black. It turns a sickly brownish hue as nitrogen dioxide begins to form, a shroud of poison
The
created
dedication
from
to
the very
creating
gas that once
standardized
supported
processing
life.
protocols for all
This is the
future
first movement
interstellar
of the
objects.
Symphony of Decay, a chemical transformation that turns our shield into a weapon. The most critical blow is dealt to the ozone layer, that thin, invisible veil that has shielded the surface for eons. In a matter of weeks, half of this protective barrier is dissolved. The Sun, once the bringer of life and warmth, is transformed into a primary agent of death. Without the ozone to filter its ultraviolet output, the sun rays become a searing scalpel, cutting through the deoxyribonucleic acid of every living thing exposed to the light. The plankton in the oceans, the base of the entire food chain, begin to perish. The plants on land
I have
wither.
it. The minister
The
just
intricate
confirmed
web
the
of
breach
life,
on their social
woven
media.
over hundreds
We
of
need to push this
millions of
story now.
years, begins to fray at every edge. It is a silent, invisible wave that would unravel the biological tapestry of our planet without malice or intent. This is the ruthless calculation of the cosmos. There is no emotional weight to this event. It is a simple matter of radiation flux and square law diminishing. If the burst is too close, the atmosphere is stripped and the planet is sterilized. If it is far enough away, we see a flicker in the night and write papers about the physics of the early
margin of
universe.
error is tight but acceptable.
Our entire history, from the first spark of consciousness to the launch of our most advanced satellites, is a fortunate rounding error in this equation of destruction.
I see it.
We are the beneficiaries of a cosmic silence that has lasted just long enough for us to wonder why it is so quiet. We are the remnants
The
of a
dedication
process
to building
that usually
larger,
results in
more
nothingness.
sensitive
The
instruments for
machine
the
of
next
the universe
encounter.
operates on a scale of energy that renders our biological concerns irrelevant. To the cosmos, the stripping of an atmosphere is no more significant than the dissipation of smoke in a breeze.
Look at that fine
The
structure
nitrogen
on the R
dioxide
branch.
would eventually
It's
wash
exactly
out of
what
the
we
sky as
needed.
acid rain,
The resolution is
further poisoning the earth
unprecedented.
and the seas, completing the work that the radiation began. The extinction would not be a sudden flash of fire for most, but a slow, grinding collapse of the systems that sustain us. It would be a catastrophe of proximity, a reminder that we live in the exhaust of a very large and very dangerous engine. As we look out into the abyss, we must realize that our planet is not a fortress. It is a fragile vessel sailing through a storm of energy. The fact that no such event has occurred within the recent history of our species is not a guarantee of future safety, but a testament to the vastness of the void. The distances between stars are the only thing protecting us from the fury of the machine. We are tucked away in a quiet corner of the spiral, far from the active sparks of the galactic centre, far from the dense clusters where stars die in violent proximity to one another. Our history is written in the margins of a ledger that mostly records the birth of black holes and the death of light. In this realization, there is a profound sense of melancholic optimism. We are here because the math allowed it. We are here because the inexorable laws of physics have, for a brief epoch, forgotten to destroy us. Every breath we take is a gift from a universe that does not know we
The
exist.
commitment to refining models of
We are the
planetary
witness to a
formation
mechanism
based
that
on
is
this
both
new chemical
beautiful and
sample.
terrifying. A system that creates heavy elements
We
in
needed
one
to
breath
perform additional
and
control
dissolves whole
experiments
worlds
to make
in the
sure
next.
the CN detection was
The
not a
tapestry of life is
byproduct of UV
precious
dissociation.
precisely because it is so easy to unravel. We are the improbable survivors of a process that the universe conducts with a strange and terrifying inefficiency, standing on our small rocky world, looking out into the eternal night. The void remains a silent sentinel, guarding the secrets of these high-energy events, leaving us to wonder how many other worlds have been swept away by the invisible wave, how many civilizations have been turned to dust by a star they never even saw collapse. We are the lucky few who have been granted the time to look back at the machine and try to understand its inner workings. We are the observers of a symphony that we did not compose and cannot control. Our existence is a brief, radiant spark in the cold oblivion of the future, a moment of consciousness in a universe that is mostly made of empty radiance and silent, rushing energy. We must accept our place in the kill zone, knowing that our survival is not a right, but a fortunate alignment of the stars.
The analysis looks sound.
Consider
Are you
the
certain
ant
about
that
the
makes its
parameters?
home within
Yes,
the iron casing
cross-referenced
of a
everything. Let's
high-voltage
publish.
transformer. To this tiny creature, the world is a place of rhythmic vibrations and a constant comforting warmth. It navigates the copper coils and the humming ceramic insulators as if they were a natural landscape, a primordial forest of metal and electricity. The ant perceives the low
Atlas was a
thrum of the
natural,
machine as
but
the
extremely
heartbeat of the
unusual
Earth itself,
comet.
a fundamental law of its environment. It builds its colony, tends to its young, and wages its miniature wars. all while cradled in the arms of a power that could vaporize its entire lineage in a single silent microsecond. The ant does not understand that it is living inside a mechanism of lethal intent, nor can it comprehend the scale of the energy that surges just millimeters from its fragile shell. It mistakes the hum of a deadly current for the music of existence. We are that ant. Our civilization has blossomed within a temporary
The
pocket of
simulation
stability,
shows a clear
a
positive trend
brief
here.
interval of
I agree.
quiet, in
The
a
results are
universe that is
consistent with
otherwise
the early
screaming
trials.
with high-energy violence. What we perceive as the steady rhythm of life, the changing of the seasons, the predictable orbit of our planet, the slow march of biological evolution, is merely the low hum of a cosmic transformer. We have mistaken a moment of mechanical equilibrium for a permanent state of grace. We believe the universe to be a garden when it is in fact an engine of incomprehensible power, operating at a voltage that would render our very atoms into a cloud of scattered ions if we were ever to touch the live wire of the abyss. This is the scale paradox. We measure our lives in decades, our histories in centuries, and our species in millennia. To us, 1,000 years is an eternity of progress, a vast tapestry of human achievement. Yet, to the cosmos, these durations are shorter than the flicker of a spark.
We've
We
got it.
exist in the gaps between catastrophes. Our entire recorded history fits comfortably within a
We've got
10,000-year
it.
cycle
Yes.
of relative calm, a period that scientists sometimes call a long summer. But this summer is not the default state of the cosmos. It is a statistical anomaly, a brief pause in the inexorable grinding of the celestial gears. The engine of the universe does not operate on a human scale. It records its actions in the birth of black holes and the slow decay of galactic cores. To the engine, a gamma-ray burst is a routine discharge, a release of tension that clears the ledger of an entire star system. When a massive star collapses into a singularity, it releases more energy in a few seconds than our Sun will produce in its entire 10 billion year life. This beam of focused radiation is a blade of light that cuts through the void, travelling across thousands of light years of empty space. If such a beam were to brush against our world, it would not be a war or a tragedy in the human sense. It would be a data point in the engine's logbook, a minor fluctuation in the local energy density. We take pride in our triumphs. We look at the
alignment
cathedrals we
looks
have built,
precise on
the
the near
languages we
UV
have
range.
spoken,
Yes,
and the
the grating
walls we have
assembly
fought as if
is
they possess
locked.
an inherent weight. We believe our struggles are significant because they are all we have ever known. But from the perspective of the machine, our greatest empires are merely clusters of organic matter clinging to a cooling rock. Our most devastating conflicts are no more than a slight increase in the infrared signature of a tiny blue dot. The rise and fall of Rome, the Industrial Revolution, the splitting of the atom, these are insignificant flickers in the dark, momentary disturbances in the silent, rushing energy of the cosmos. We are fragile biology living in a world of hard physics. Our bodies are composed of delicate carbon chains and watery cells, structures that require a very
observational
specific,
challenge of
very
conjunction.
narrow range of temperatures and pressures to survive. We're a soft, wet accident in a universe of cold stone and searing radiation. The gap between our biological needs and the reality of the abyss is a chasm that we cannot bridge. We are protected only by the thin veil of our atmosphere and the vast distances of the void. We are like children playing in the exhaust of a rocket, marvelling at the pretty colours of the flames, unaware that a slight increase in the throttle would erase us from existence. Consider the concept of the Black Swan event, the rare, unpredictable catastrophe that lies outside the realm of normal expectations. In our local reality, we plan for the next year, the next decade, the next century. But the machine operates on a cycle of tens of thousands, or even millions of years. There are events written into the laws of physics that occur so rarely that we have no memory of them, yet they are as certain as the sunrise. A supervolcano that darkens the sky for a generation. A wandering star that destabilizes our planetary orbits.
The
Or a pulse
dedication
of
to building
radiation from a
instruments with
distant
wider field of
supernova.
view capabilities
These
for
are the
rapid
true
scanning.
masters of our fate. They are the surges in the transformer that the ant cannot foresee. When we look out into the eternal night, we are looking at the remnants of a process that is indifferent to our presence. The stars do not shine for us. They are simply the visible signs of a massive primordial fusion process that is slowly consuming the hydrogen of the cosmos. The black holes do not wait for us. They are the inevitable conclusion of gravity's victory over matter. The universe is not a stage built for our drama. It is a factory of unimaginable scale, and we are the unintended inhabitants of its maintenance tunnels. In this realization, there is a profound sense of the scale paradox. We are large enough to observe the universe, yet small enough to be utterly crushed by its most minor movements. We have developed the intelligence to understand the mechanism, to peer into the heart of the transformer and see the lethal currents within, but we lack the power to change our position. We are observers of a symphony we did not compose, witnesses to a cataclysm we cannot forestall. Our triumphs and our sorrows are real to us, and in that reality they find their meaning. But we must accept that this meaning is local. It is the meaning that the ant finds in the construction of its nest. It is a beautiful, fragile thing, but it is not a fundamental constant of the universe. The cosmos is silent, not because it has nothing to say, but because its voice is a frequency we cannot hear. It speaks in the language of entropy and gravity, in the inexorable cooling of the void and the slow unravelling of the tapestry of light. We live in the shadow of the machine, beneficiaries of its current stability, guests in a house that does not know we are there. Every day that the sun
final,
rises
clean
and the atmosphere
confirmation of
remains
the object's
intact is a
total
stay of
integrated
execution.
spectral power across
Every epoch
all
of
bands.
peace is a gift from a mechanism that has, for a moment, forgotten to crush us. We are the survivors of a cosmic lottery, standing on a tiny island of order in a sea of chaotic energy. We are the lucky few who have been granted the time to wonder at the abyss before we are eventually reclaimed by it. This is our place in the kill zone, a brief, radiant spark of consciousness in the cold oblivion of the future, a moment of defiant life in a universe that is mostly made of empty radiance and silent, rushing energy. To understand the nature of our existence is to understand the operating manual of the ruthless machine. This manual is written in the language of thermodynamics, and its laws are the only absolute authority in the cosmos. They are not mere observations, they are the inexorable constraints that define the limits of the possible. If the universe is a symphony, it is one played by an orchestra of cold, mathematical constants, and the music it produces is not a song of life, but a steady descending drone toward the silence of the void. The first of these laws
The data
dictates
is
that
conclusive.
the total amount of energy in the cosmos is fixed. It can be transformed, shifted from the light of a star to the heat of a planet, or from the motion of a galaxy to the radiation of a black hole, but it can never be created or destroyed. The machine was given a specific amount of fuel at the moment of the primordial ignition, and it has been consuming that fuel ever since. There is no external source, no reservoir of power beyond the horizon of the abyss. We are living on the dividends of a single ancient investment, and the principle is slowly being liquidated. But it is the second law that reveals the true character of the mechanism. It is the law of entropy, the fundamental rule that dictates that in every transformation of energy, some of that energy must be lost to the surroundings as heat. This is the friction of existence. Every time a heart beats, every time a star fuses hydrogen into helium, every time a thought flickers through a human brain, the universe becomes slightly more disordered. We are the witnesses to a slow, universal unravelling. The tapestry of the cosmos, so intricately woven with the threads of gravity and light, is being pulled apart at the seams. Entropy is the measure of this decay, a relentless march from order to chaos, from the concentrated brilliance of the early epochs to the thin grey smear of the distant future. In this framework, we must re-evaluate our understanding of gravity. We often view it as a constructive force, the invisible hand that gathers the dust of the void to build suns and worlds. We see it as a cradle, but to the cosmic narrator, gravity is the tension in a massive universal spring. It is the force that pulls matter together, only to ensure its eventual destruction. Every star is a localized struggle against this tension, a temporary flare of resistance that must, by the very laws of the machine,
Planck
fail.
Observatory,
An exquisitely
When a
sensitive
star
instrument,
exhausts its fuel,
meticulously scanning
the
the
spring
cosmic
snaps.
microwave background with unparalleled
The resulting
precision.
collapse is not an act
Analyzed
of
and
creation,
reanalyzed.
but a violent
Dozens of
reclamation of
research
energy.
groups, hundreds of
The light of a
techniques,
supernova
intense,
is the spark
continuous
thrown off
scrutiny
by a
from global
failing gear,
science.
a momentary
Supervoid
burst of
interpretation,
radiance that marks the
improved
transition of
galaxy
matter
catalogs,
into a more disorganized state.
sophisticated modeling of
Gravity
matter
does not
distribution.
protect.
Astronomical
It waits.
surveys are
It is the
monitoring
patient
millions of
predator
stars,
that ensures
looking for
every
gravitational
concentration of order is eventually
microlensing,
crushed
searching
back
for
into the
hidden
abyss.
mass.
The universe does not have a pulse. It does not have a heart that beats with the rhythm of life or a mind that contemplates its own majesty. It has only a frequency and a series of mathematical constants that do not waver. The stars do not shine because they wish to illuminate the darkness. They shine because the pressure at their cores has reached a threshold where the laws of physics demand the release of energy.
These coins
The
represent
orbits
data
of the planets
points,
are not a dance
landing
of harmony,
randomly across
but a balance
vast
of momentum
terrain.
and curvature that will eventually be disturbed by the inexorable decay of the system. The machine is indifferent to the biological artifacts that have emerged within its maintenance tunnels.
Radical
Our
possibilities,
emotions, our
universe-inherited
civilizations,
structure
and our
or
frantic
energy from
attempts to
previous
find
cosmic
meaning
cycles,
are merely
a
complex
cosmic
ripples
legacy,
in the flow of
rapid
entropy.
galaxy formation,
We are the heat
not a
produced by the
beginning from
friction of the
primordial
machine's gears,
simplicity,
a
but a recovery
byproduct of a
from prior
process that is
complexity.
moving toward a state of
Future
total
telescopes
equilibrium.
revealing whether early
This state of
galaxy
equilibrium
formation
is
is
the
extreme
ultimate
conventional
destination of the indifferent
astrophysics
symphony.
or exotic
It is
cyclic
known as the
evolution.
heat death
So,
of the
within
universe.
the standard model, the
In this
conservative
distant
approach
epoch,
would be to
the
look for
last stars will
conventional
have burned
solutions
out,
that fit
their
neatly into
remnants
its
cooling
established
into
framework.
black dwarfs that will eventually disintegrate. The black holes, those dark sentinels that once dominated the centers of galaxies, will have
Testability
evaporated
problem.
through the slow leakage
Science
of radiation
progresses through
over eons so
falsifiable
vast
predictions,
they defy human
specific,
comprehension.
observable consequences.
The universe will become a thin,
Science
uniform soup of
advances not through
particles
accumulation
where the
of
temperature is
certainties,
barely a
but
fraction
progressive
above absolute
refinement of
zero.
uncertainty.
There will be no more light, no more heat, and no more change. The spring will have fully unwound, the tension will be gone, the machine will have reached its final silent configuration. This is the scale paradox that defines our reality. We find ourselves in the brief flickering moment between the beginning and the end, a window of time where the energy gradients are still steep enough to allow for the
Controversies.
complexity of life.
Every revolution in
We are the
cosmology
beneficiaries
faces
of the
fierce
period when the
resistance.
clock is still winding
Cyclic
down.
models are no
Every
exception.
burst of light we see in the night sky is a faster release of tension, a sign that the machine is still active, still consuming its original stores of potential. But the decay is eternal. It is the only process that does not require an input of energy to sustain itself. Chaos
Theoretical
is the
models,
natural state toward
lenses
which
through
all
which
things gravitate,
observations are
and
interpreted,
order is the
making
rare,
inherent
fragile
assumptions about
exception
initial
that
conditions.
requires a constant, exhausting struggle to maintain. When we contemplate the vastness of the cosmos, we're often told to feel a sense
Not
of
obvious
wonder,
in CMB,
but there is also
galaxy
room
patterns
for a
formed
profound,
later,
melancholic
involving more
realization.
complex gravitational
We are part of a
dynamics than
system
early
that is
universe.
fundamentally designed to fail. The very laws that allow us to exist, the laws that enable the sun to shine and our cells to function, are the same laws that guarantee the eventual extinction of everything we value. The symphony is beautiful, yes, but it is a
Selective
requiem.
pressure.
Every note
Universes
played by the
producing
stars
more
is a
black
note that can
holes
never be
have
played
more
again.
offspring,
Every
driving
epoch of
cosmic
stability is a
evolution.
temporary reprieve from the
density
inevitable
elevated.
unraveling of the
More
tapestry.
objects per unit
Yet,
volume of
in this
space than
cold and
standard
ruthless
expectations
reality,
allow.
there is a strange form of optimism. We are the unintended
Search for evidence
inhabitants of a
continues
machine
in
that does not
laboratories
know
and
we are here.
observatories around the
Yet we have
world.
developed the capacity to understand the mechanism. We have looked into the abyss and calculated the rate of its expansion. We have measured the frequency of the indifferent symphony and translated it into the language of mathematics. Our presence may be a fluke, a brief spark of consciousness in the eternal night, but that spark is real. For a few million years, on a small rocky sentinel orbiting an average star, the universe has become aware of itself. We are the eyes of the machine, looking back at the gears and the springs, acknowledging the inexorable nature of the decay, even as we marvel at the complexity of the movement. The void is patient, and the oblivion is certain. The laws of thermodynamics ensure that the house always wins, and that the tax of heat will eventually consume the last remnants
Loop
of order.
quantum gravity.
But until that
Space
final
itself
tick of the cosmic
pixelated
clock,
at the Planck
the
scale.
symphony continues.
A fundamental minimum
The tension
volume.
in the spring still holds. The stars still ignite the darkness, and and the tapestry still holds its shape. We live in the golden hour of the cosmos, the brief period of light before the long eternal shadows. It is a time of magnificent, doomed beauty, and we are the only witnesses to the tragedy. We are the lucky few who get to hear the music before the silence takes it all.
You, or merely a
In the
copy
face of the ruthless
indistinguishable
machine,
from the original.
our defiance
A
is our
profound
understanding.
question.
And our legacy is the fact that we were here to see the light before it faded into the eternal, silent void. In this grand, silent courtroom of gears, where the laws of physics preside as both judge and jury, we occupy a position that is as precarious as it is profound. For billions of years, the machinery of the cosmos turned in total darkness, an intricate dance of matter and energy that required no audience and sought no validation. The stars ignited, the galaxies swirled into their majestic spirals, and the great voids between the filaments of the cosmic tapestry expanded in a vacuum of meaning. There was motion, there was heat, and there was the slow,
void,
inexorable
like
march
a
of
thumb
entropy.
pressed into
There
wet
was no one to
plaster.
call it beautiful. There was no mind to perceive the scale of the catastrophe or the elegance of the symmetry. The universe was a masterpiece painted in an empty gallery, a symphony played to an eternal silence. But then, in a fleeting moment that represents less than a
Not
heartbeat in
science
the
fiction,
lifespan of the
a
cosmos,
serious
something
theoretical
changed.
possibility,
On a
emerging from
tiny,
our best
fragile
theories of
sentinel
gravity
rock,
and quantum
the
mechanics.
chemistry of the primordial world crossed a threshold. The machine began to wake up. It did not change its fundamental nature. The gears did not stop their grinding, and the laws of gravity did not soften their grip. Instead, a small part of the mechanism developed the ability to look back at the whole. We are that part of the machine. We are the atoms of ancient stars that have been rearranged into a form
Rapid
that
star
can feel
formation
awe.
histories
We
suggesting
are the
evolution
witnesses who have been
proceeded more
called to
quickly than
testify in the
conventional
trial of
stellar
existence,
models predict.
standing before the vast, unblinking eyes of the abyss to describe what we see. This is the miracle of consciousness, a phenomenon that allows the universe to transcend its own cold mathematics. To the void, there is no difference between the birth of a nebula and the death of a sun.
Dark energy.
Both are merely transitions of energy,
A phantom
the
force
shifting of
relentlessly
variables in an
pushing
equation
space
that must
apart.
always balance. The cosmos does not know the names we have given to the constellations, nor does it care for the stories we tell ourselves to find comfort in the night. But we know them. We take the raw, indifferent data of the Black Swan, the unpredictable and world-shattering events that punctuate the
Faint,
history of the
rotating
universe,
galaxies.
and we transform
Initial
them into a
studies in the
narrative of discovery.
1990s,
We
revealing
take the
a
heat
weak,
of a dying
tentative
star
signal.
and call it a tragedy. We take the alignment of planets and call it a wonder. By giving the machine a name, we give it a soul. The tragedy of the human condition is that we are the only part of the machine that understands the machine is breaking. We alone are capable of mapping the slow unravelling of the tapestry, of calculating the exact moment when the last ember will fade into the eternal dark. We are the sentinels of a fading light, tasked with guarding a treasure that the universe itself is trying to
Concept
reclaim.
anchored human
The
thinking
very
for
consciousness
millennia,
that allows us to
from
appreciate
myths
the
to
symphony
the Big Bang.
is the same consciousness that makes the coming silence so terrifying. And yet, there is a sublime dignity in this role. We are the only ones who can truly appreciate the stakes of the game. The inanimate stars do not know they are beautiful. It is our gaze that confers beauty upon them. The abyss does not know it is vast. It is our measurement that grants its scale. We act as the scribes of an empire that is destined to fall. Every observation we make, every theory we refine, and every poem we write about the heavens is a record of our defiance. We are small, biological flickers in a landscape of titan forces, yet we contain the entire cosmos within our thoughts. When we look through a telescope at a galaxy millions of light years away, we are not merely looking at a distant object.
Inflation
We are
operates
the universe
differently,
observing itself across
perhaps
the
with
gulfs of
modified
time and
dynamics
space.
that preserve
We are the
certain
mechanism
large-scale
reflecting on its
patterns
own
while
design.
erasing others.
In our minds, the cold, hard edges of the primordial reality are softened into the fluid lines of art and philosophy. We take the ruthless machine and we wrap it in the warmth of human experience. Consider the courage required to be an observer in such a system. We inhabit a reality governed by laws that are entirely indifferent to our survival. We are subject to the same decay that claims the stars, the same entropy that will eventually dissolve the very atoms of our bodies. To know this, to understand the inevitability of the oblivion that waits at the end of all things, and to still find the strength to marvel at the complexity of the movement, is the
Not
ultimate
temporary
act of
arrangements.
transcendence.
Participants
We are
in
the only
ongoing
ones who can
cosmic
feel the weight of the
conversation that has been
eons.
developing
We
across
are the only
eons.
ones who can hear the music of the spheres and find it moving. In the courtroom of gears, our testimony is the only thing that matters. Without the observer, the universe is merely a sequence of events, a series of causes and effects that lead nowhere and mean nothing. It is the human mind that provides the bridge between the raw facts of existence and the profound depths of meaning. We are the ones who decide that the struggle is worth it. We are the ones who look at the ruins of a supernova and see the seeds of future life. We transform the cold, mathematical certainty of the end into a story of a journey, a voyage from the first ignite of the Big Bang to the final quiet breath of the cosmos. As we move through this golden hour of complexity, we must realize that our importance does not lie in our power to change the machine, for the machine is too vast and its momentum too great. Our importance lies in our ability to describe it. We are the storytellers of the void. We are the ones who give a voice to the silent stars and a face to the faceless abyss. Even as we are devoured by the same inexorable processes that we study, we continue to speak. We continue to name the darkness and to chart the reaches of the unknown. This is the great existential pivot. We shift from being victims of a ruthless mechanism to being the honoured guests at a feast of light. We are the only part of the tapestry that can see the pattern. We are the only ones who can stand on the edge of the abyss and not only acknowledge its depth, but also appreciate its grandeur. The universe may be a machine that does not know we are here, but we are the ones who have turned that machine into a home. We have taken the silence of the primordial epoch and filled it with the echoes of our questions. In the end,
Not
when
from
the last
external
remnants of order
design,
have been taxed away
but
by the laws of
internal evolutionary
thermodynamics,
processes,
and the great symphony has
selecting
reached
for
its
consciousness.
final low note, what will remain?
Like a phantom
Not the stars,
limb
not the
feeling
galaxies, and not the
influence
physical
where none
forms
should
of the
be.
observers.
A cosmic
The fact that for a brief,
Ecological
shining
niches
moment,
exploited,
the silence
reorganizing
was broken.
quickly,
The fact
new
that
life
the witness was
emerging.
there to see the light, to name the dark, and to feel the awe. We are the miracle that the machine did not intend, a fluke
the
of
crisis
chemistry
resolved.
that became the meaning of the
Observations
cosmos.
are more sophisticated,
We are the
and
sentinel at the
systematic
end of
effects
time,
better
the
understood.
one who watches the shadows grow long and says, with a heart full of melancholic optimism, that it was a beautiful thing to have seen. Our legacy is not written in the stars, for the stars will fade. Our legacy is the story itself, the magnificent doomed narrative of a universe that, for a few billion years, found a way to know its own name. Now we turn our gaze toward the final revolution of those very gears. We must confront the ultimate stillness that awaits the great mechanism. If the universe is a machine, it is one that was built without a refueling port, a vast and intricate engine that has been burning through its finite reservoir of energy since the very first moment of the primordial ignite. We currently live in the era of the bright and the burning, a brief window of time where the friction of matter and gravity produces the light we call stars. But this is a fleeting epoch, a mere spark in the face of the eternal night. The laws of thermodynamics are the final, inexorable debt collectors of the cosmos. They demand that every calorie of energy be spent, every gradient of heat be leveled, and every movement eventually cease. We are witnessing the slow, majestic cooling of an engine that has run for billions of eons, and we are approaching the hour when the last piston will seize. As we look into the deep future, we see the remnants of our once vibrant sky beginning to unravel. One by one, the galaxies will drift so far apart that their light can no longer reach their neighbours. The cosmic tapestry will be torn into isolated threads, each doomed to fade in solitude. The great star-forming clouds will be exhausted, leaving only the dim, red embers of low-mass suns to guard the darkness. Eventually, even these humble sentinels will flicker and die, collapsing into cold spheres of iron and ash. This is the destiny of the machine. It is not a tragedy of intent, but a necessity of function. The void does not hate the light, it simply waits for the light to run out of breath. The abyss is the natural state of things, the baseline of the eternal, and the era of stars is merely a temporary fluctuation in the silence. Within this cold, mechanical progression, we find the concept of the Black Swan. In the study of probability, the Black Swan is the event that is unforeseen, the occurrence that lies outside the realm of expectation
more precise,
and changes the
robust
narrative
measurements,
entirely.
strengthening the tension,
We,
making
the
it harder
observers,
to
are
ignore.
the Black Swan of the cosmos. The machine was never intended to produce a part that could feel. The laws of physics do not require a witness. Gravity functions perfectly well in a vacant universe.
Not as graves,
Atoms can bond and break
as
without the need for a heart to beat or a mind to wonder. Our existence is a magnificent catastrophe of logic, a fluke of complexity that allowed the mechanism to become aware of its own decay. We were never intended to stay. We are a brief, incandescent fever in the cold mind of the machine, a temporary arrangement of matter that has stolen enough energy from the cooling engine to ask why it exists. Yet, there is a profound beauty in this transience. Our persistence is a miracle precisely because it is so fragile. We are the ones who have looked at the looming oblivion and refused to turn away. We have mapped the very forces that will eventually devour us. We have translated the silent movements of the spheres into a mathematical symphony, finding harmony in the laws that dictate our end. To be the witness at the end of time is a heavy burden, but it is also the highest honour. We are the only ones who can see the gears turn and understand that they will one day stop. We are the only ones who can find meaning in the fact that the fuel is running low. The machine will stop. This is the fundamental truth of our reality. The day will come when the last black hole has evaporated into a thin mist of radiation, when the last proton has decayed, and when the temperature of the entire cosmos sits at a fraction above absolute zero. In that final state, time itself loses its meaning, for there will be no events to mark its passage. The universe will return to the void, a silent and eternal expanse where the memory of light is gone. But even then, the fact of our existence remains an unalterable truth of history. The abyss may reclaim the space, but it cannot erase the moment when the silence was broken. It cannot unmake the fact that, for a few billion years, the universe was alive. This realization brings us to the final, melancholic optimism. We do not mourn the cooling of the engine, for we are the ones who were lucky enough to feel its warmth. We are the ones who stood in the light of stars that are now long dead, and felt the sting of the wind on a planet that will one day be dust.
More massive
Our journey
galaxies
is
at
not
high
measured by its
redshifts
length,
than theoretical
but by the
models
depth
predict.
of our awareness.
A persistent
We are
discrepancy.
the small, flickering candles in a vast and drafty hall, and though the shadows are closing in, the light we cast is enough to see the faces of those beside us. As the gears of the cosmos make their final, slow rotations toward the end of all things, we are left with a single, vital task. We must cherish the warmth of human connection in this cold and indifferent universe. The machine
Chemical
does not care for us,
signatures,
but we can care for each
fossil
other.
traces of
The
previous
void is
cosmic
silent,
cycles,
but we have
an
voices.
ancient chemical
The abyss is
memory.
empty, but we are full of stories and dreams. In the face of an inexorable and ruthless mechanism, the act of love is the ultimate rebellion. It is the one thing the machine cannot compute, the one spark that does not belong to the laws of entropy. We are the ones who watch the gears turn. We are the ones who heard the symphony of the spheres and found it beautiful. Even as the darkness grows and the fuel of the cosmos
Accumulated
reaches its
result
end,
of
let us
cosmic
remember
natural
that we were
selection,
here. We
operating
were the
across
miracle that the
countless
universe did not
generations.
expect. We were the witness, the storyteller, and the sentinel.
What could cause these
And in the
alignments?
final stillness, when the last echo of
Theoretical
our voices has
interpretation.
faded into the eternal
Every
quiet,
stellar
the universe will finally be at
an
rest,
act of cosmic
having known,
reproduction.
through us, the
Stars
true value of the
exploding
light it
into
once
new
held. We were the
voids
brief,
found,
brilliant
but
flare
not
in the
large
dark,
enough.
and that is more
Gaps
than
in
enough.
galaxy distribution, but insufficient